I was standing by my window on a cold and cloudy day when I saw that hearse come rolling, Lord, to carry my sister away. The men in this country ask us to explain ourselves, our ways of thinking. I just wonder what needs to be explained. Have we not made ourselves very clear? You want a place in the trades and professions where you can earn your bread. So do we. You want some means of self-expression, some ways of satisfying your own personal ambitions. So do we. They have a voice in the government. That's all that we're asking for. What is there left to explain? You think that gaining the right to vote wouldn't make a difference, wouldn't affect how we women really live. Tell that to the 146 women who just a few short years ago died because there were not enough fire exits in the building. A vote is a fire escape. If not for yourselves, do it for your daughters, your granddaughters, your nieces. Suffrage is not a dead issue. It's me and it's you. It's us. As our founding fathers were writing one of the most important documents in history, Abigail Adams was pleading with her husband to remove the ladies. After 60 years, however, the ladies still needed a voice. Women such as Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Karen Chapman Catt had begun to fight for the voiceless. Abolition, however, had won the day. Women had fought years for suffrage, but when the Civil War came, it changed the nation, and it also changed the method of protest. Catt's National American Women's Suffrage Association was founded in 1890. At last, suffrage was again on the scene. After years of lobbying on a state-by-state basis, they needed a spark to ignite a major change. They needed Alice Paul. After her years of work in European organizations such as the Women's Social and Political Union, and later on in NASA, Paul was ready to lead the charge for suffrage. What do we do next? The government is not just going to give us the right to vote. We have the support of some, but not many, not enough. And NASA says that they are not against us, but they are certainly not for us either. Every time we try to make a change, an improvement, they cut us off. They sent us to Washington lacking in supplies, money, and hope. So what did we do? We started pooling our resources and raising the money that was so desperately needed. How could they accuse us of stealing that from them? Do they not see how they are holding us back? How they are holding every woman back? The time to split away from NASA has come. I feel as though it's better to have a small, united group than this large debating society. There is no other choice. There are other women who feel as though I do, and I know I will not be alone in this fight. We will do more than write tired letters to senators, more than sit silently in meetings and take the verbal abuse that is thrust upon us. We will worry less about lobbying each individual state, and more about passing an amendment, and nothing short of that will do. We will break the mold of women everywhere by marching off the steps of our homes and onto the steps of President Wilson's. We will picket until we are heard, until a difference is made. We will sing those songs of childhood, hymns of faith that made us strong. Ones our mothers taught us, hear the angels sing along. I believe the might of America is the sincere love of its people for the freedom of mankind. Woodrow Wilson, March 6, 1915. There is nothing in liberty unless it is translated as a definite action. Wilson, 1970. We have forgotten the history of our country. We have forgotten how to agitate when necessary. Woodrow Wilson, a letter to Congress. The government says we are democracies. Help us to win the war so that democracies may survive. We women of the United States tell you that America is not a democracy when 20 million women are denied the right to vote. This nation is not really free. Our government must first liberate its own people before it can help do the same for others. As Sojourner Truth boldly stated at the Women's Rights Convention of 1848, if the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down, all alone, then these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. We are now asking to do it, and the men better let us.
determination for change. They were mocked and spit on, yet still they remained silent. When President Wilson ordered our troops onto the front lines of World War I, Paul's army remained strong in their picket lines despite the public ridicule. However, in October of 1917, 13 women protesters were arrested and charged for obstructing sidewalk traffic outside the lighthouse gates. It was on that day that the silence was broken. While other members of the NWP, such as Lucy Burns, watched in shock the audacity of the U.S. government, Alice Paul was determined to make a change. The morning Alice stood on the picket line, she bravely quoted and burned President Wilson's promises of democracies for all. She was arrested in November of 1917. She refused to pay taxes without representation, and she refused to pay a fine that supported this arrangement. She was sentenced to 7 months of imprisonment.
Oh, I stood there with courage, trying to hold up and be brave. Oh, but I could not hide my sorrow as they carried my sister away.
Dear Abby, I pray this letter finds you doing very well. I have staged a hunger strike here among the women, and I am currently on my 27th day without food. Many of the women are losing all consciousness of any cause, any sense of carrying out a non-violent revolution against our government. Only the feelings of darkness and desolation remain. Yesterday was a horrible day for me in defeating. I was vomiting continuously through the entire process. I had been through this before in Britain, but the words "give me liberty" or "give me death" have never been so real. On more than one occasion, Abby, they have placed me in a sanitarium in hopes that a doctor will find me mentally insane. But I am not any crazier than the laws that I am forced to abide by every day. Abby, how many women will sacrifice all they have or ever hope to have on this one chance? Do you really think the men in this country could ever give way to our new ways of thinking? Will things ever change?
Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? For there's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky.
Once Abby Baker, the secretary of the NWP, leaked Alice Paul's letters to the newspapers, President Wilson had a public relations nightmare on his hands. He had once ignored the militant actions of Alice Paul, but with the hunger strikes and the prison sentences, public opinion was beginning to shift. Letters to President Wilson actually supporting the suffragettes began to far outnumber those opposed. He had no other choice but to cave. With the newfound support of the president, both NASA and the NWP expected swift success, expected easy recruitment of the needed votes, but they were wrong. It's all come down to this. We either succeed or we fail. After our unexpected defeat in the Senate last year, we really discovered what we could do. We should have the vote by now, but no. Our country is one that supposedly promises life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but we have yet to see any of it. Other countries have allowed suffrage. Women in New Zealand have had the vote since 1873, and British women gained it just last year. When will it be our turn? Could it be? Did it happen this time? Yes, Wednesday, June 4th, 1919. Suffrage wins in the Senate, now goes to the states. Women may vote in 1920. The dream is real. We must get the states to ratify. On June 4th, 1919, Alice Paul saw her dreams realized. Forever, American women would be able to shatter any glass ceiling placed over us. She knew that the American weapon for justice was the vote, and we had it. She gave us this gift not by meaningless words, but by deeds that could not be disregarded. Although some women in the movement dwindled, Alice knew that the fight was not finished, thus she created the Equal Rights Amendment in 1923. Although the passing of the amendment never came, she fought hard for it until her death in 1977. Her entire life, Alice never doubted that equal rights was the right direction. Most problems, most reforms are complicated, but to her, there was nothing complicated about ordinary